talking about the High Elves today, and the High Elves are... when you read the army book for the High Elves, it says the history of the High Elves is the history of the whole world, which is quite a big claim.
I think that's pretty much the High Elves. Not necessarily that they are the world, but pretty big claims.
That they think they are.
Yeah, they're elves. All elves are like that, really. But
none more so than the High Elves.
No, they definitely see themselves as the protectors of the whole world, even if these days they've been reduced to just being on Ulthuan, this island in the middle of the ocean.
So if you've been following our blog, you can check out the High Elf roster that we revealed. We also did a live stream about it. We've got a little excerpt from the High Elf army book that tells you a little bit of information about them. Gives you a flavour before we start talking, so I'm just going to read that out for you now. There are few sights more glorious than an army of High Elves. Serried ranks of white-garbed soldiers take to the field alongside proud knights, mighty mages, and ancient creatures of legend. The High Elves are an elite force who, warrior for warrior, can outmatch almost any other race in the Warhammer world. Over the long millennia of their existence, they have mastered every style of fighting. Whether you seek phalanxes of spears, unstoppable cavalrymen, dead-eyed archers, or peerless charioteers, you will find them here. I mean, I feel like a High Elf wrote the High Elf rulebook. I know that doesn't make any sense.
I don't think they'd let anyone else write their little book, that's for sure. But it's not far off. I mean, Ulthuan is a pretty varied place, with lots of different little sort of like mini kingdoms around, and they all bring their own sort of flavour and strength to a High Elf army.
It's almost similar to Bretonnia in that way. Like you've got the duchies in Bretonnia who make up that kingdom as a whole. And it's a similar thing with High Elves. There's a lot of political intrigue when it comes to
some of the more
dealing.
The most interesting stuff with the High Elves is how they are. It's kind of like it's pretty House of Cardsy. They're sort of all like always plotting and a lot of intrigue, as you say, and sort of political manoeuvring going on under the surface, but they all pretend that they're all. Well, I mean, they are really all for the High Elves, but within that, they do want to see their particular faction.
It's kind of like that guy who turns up to a football match and it's like, I'm part of this team, but I want the Man of the Match award myself.
Yeah,
now.
Exactly. A bad player.
Yeah,
but somehow it works. Yeah, then that's pretty much the High Elves, I would say.
So when playing as the High Elves in Total War Warhammer 2, you will have access from the get-go. There probably will be other legendary lords added on, but from the get-go you will have access to 2 legendary lords, and they are arguably the most famous characters in all of High Elf history.
Tyrion and Teclis?
Tyrion and Teclis.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a lot of famous figures in High Elf history, but Tyrion and Teclis, these twins, this pair, are currently probably the 2 greatest High Elves alive.
Well, they are sort of like the poster boys almost. When you talk about High Elves, you think immediately of Tyrion and Teclis.
Yeah, you do. So
they were born as twins, and they were the sons of the current Phoenix King?
Yes, but they have their line traces all the way back to Anarion, they say. And Tyrion and Teclis, although twins, couldn't be a whole lot different if you tried. They're pretty chalk and cheese.
Yeah, so you've got Tyrion, who's this like strong warrior who's all about physical battle, mastering his melee capabilities, and doesn't bother too much about the political side.
He's not so good at it, no.
Yeah,
but they do say there's no greater warrior in all of Ulthuan than Tyrion.
Exactly, and then you've got his twin, who is Teclis.
Yep.
Actually, the first person we see in the announced trailer for Warhammer 2, with the moon crest on his helmet. He's actually incredibly weak. The only reason he's still alive is through these magical potions that he drinks every day. But there is no greater user of magic.
No, they say that the Teclis is perhaps stronger even than Nagash himself. Although obviously he's never had the chance to test that out. But they say that there's no one greater or more powerful than magic in the whole wide world.
So do you want to fill us in on some of the background of these 2 characters?
Of Tyrion and Teclis? Well, they like to say Tyrion, they say, is Anarion reborn himself because he's that great and that mighty and that powerful in combat. But he wouldn't think that he was stronger than his brother, for instance, because it's entirely possible that the Teclis would be able to just sort of incinerate him beat him an eye. But together they've fought many battles. In Teclis' past, for instance, he brought magic to the Empire, to the realm of men. He helped set up the colleges of magic by just giving them just an inkling of the of the true magic that he was able to command. And he's sort of more. He sort of likes to learn and to go out and explore, whereas Tyrion is all about staying in Ulthuan and fighting back evil and preventing chaos wherever he can. And like you said, he's got no head for the politics. So it's sort of brute strength that keeps him going and keeps him sort of in good standing with everybody else. Whereas,
but it's not just brute strength; it's bravery as well.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
he is that sort of like ideal leader that you'd want on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Especially for those. I mean, if you're coming at this from a total war perspective, you want a strong leader who's able to take on any foe that comes his way. And if you're playing as a high elf, you need Tyrion on your side.
Tyrion goes on the front line, and Tyrion goes
Exactly.
into battle, and that's how it is. And Teclis stays back a little bit and blows people to pieces.
Smashes them to smithereens
Absolutely.
with comets of Casadora.
Exactly, and then things even worse maybe.
Yeah. So we touched on it earlier. Tyrion is trying to defend the Isle of Ulthuan, and Ulthuan is in a bit of a precarious place at the moment.
Yeah. Ulthuan sort of sits alone in the middle of the ocean, and in the middle of Ulthuan, I don't know whether everyone knows what Ulthuan looks like, but it's like it's a ring, like a ringed island, and in the middle is a small little island called the Isle of the Dead, and on the Isle of the Dead is the Great Vortex itself, maintained by the High Elves, and essentially holding the world together, which is not as safe as it sounds. It probably doesn't sound very safe, because the Great Vortex was set up to stop chaos when chaos first came down, or to stop it getting worse. And then, during the Sundering, it was nearly destroyed by Malekith, who is just a nasty man. He wanted to, if he couldn't be king, he wanted to destroy the entire world.
Yeah.
So he tried to destabilize the vortex.
Proper threw his toys out the pram.
Yeah, exactly. It's table flip 101. If I can't have this, nobody can. And so that's essentially Ulthuan. So defending Ulthuan is defending the world, and that's how the High Elves see it, as protectors of the entire world.
So Ulthuan sits in this, like you said, this central place in the world. You've got the old world where we started into Warhammer 1.
Yep. It's off to
We're
the east.
moving into the new world,
Yep.
which is off to the west. So
Yep.
obviously it's modelled after the world that we live in.
Yeah.
So you've got Europe and the Americas on the western front. We've also got the Southlands here. So Ulthuan sits in this sort of nest where I suppose the Pacific Ocean would be in the real world. And it's kind of modelled after the sort of like Atlantis kind of idea. The isle is sinking around you and they're trying to
and
prop
that
it up
again
with
is
magic.
to do with the Sundering and stuff, and chaos magic everywhere. It's just sort of dragging it down, and the spell is being woven in the center of Ulthuan and the Isle of the Dead is sort of keeping it all together. But we don't know for how long that will last. They very much say that the High Elves are in their twilight.
Yeah.
But they still they don't want to believe that, and they won't believe that, and they'll keep trying to stick around because they think it's their duty.
They're almost like this fallen empire that refuses to fall the final hurdle.
But they have fallen so far. They used to be all over the world.
Yeah.
They helped shape it, according to them. If you believe them, then they essentially had a hand in everything. And now this is what's left of them.
And they are, I mean, they've had such a incredible history, and they've shown such strength and political might, and their military tactics are so fine-tuned, but at the end it's kind of hubris which has been their downfall, which it always is with those kind
they
of
are
empires.
like everything in the Warhammer world. They're tainted by chaos. So they used to be super noble, super generous and ambivalent, and then that sort of twisted a little bit to its darker side by chaos being everywhere. Now they're, like you say, they're hubristic, they're arrogant, they're overconfident, overzealous, and then that started to lead, like it has every race in the Warhammer world, to their downfall. So, oops.
So, the birth of the High Elves came with Anarion,
Yes.
the Defender, first of his name.
Be careful.
There's a lot of reused names in High Elf lore.
Yeah, they all.
It kind of comes from honouring tradition.
Yeah.
High Elves are all about tradition, and they're very set in their ways and don't like things to change.
No.
So you have to look back right at the start of the history to find out why the High Elves are like they are. So can you tell us a bit more about Anarion?
About Anarion? Well, the first Phoenix King, and he came from relatively humble backgrounds. He wasn't super duper. He wasn't noble. He was a wanderer, and he came back to Ulthuan, to the High Elves when when the land was riven by madness and by battle and by civil war and strife and that kind of thing. And he traveled to the shrine of Asurion, where the flames of Asurion are, and he begged the god to save his people.
Mm-hmm.
And then he offered himself as sacrifice and threw himself into the flames of Asurion. But rather than being sacrificed, he wasn't harmed by the flames, and he came out the other side, transformed into the first Phoenix King. And from that point on, he struck out, unified the High Elves and sort of unified Ulthuan and turned the High Elves into the power that they sort of rose and rose and rose from that point. And so every Phoenix King has to go through the same ritual to be decided worthy of ruling them.
It's quite interesting because Phoenixes are a big part of the sort of the culture behind how the High Elves work, and you almost see with Anarion, he came in when the High Elves were at their weakest again, and made this rebirth following the same path that he did. He went into the flames, came out of the ashes a new man, or a new elf rather, and as did the civilization that he then led.
Yeah,
so
essentially the whole thing was like a phoenix.
Yeah, the phoenix is like a metaphor for how the High Elves work.
Is that why they call it the Phoenix King?
Maybe. And it's kind of happening now as well in the time period in which Warhammer Fantasy Battles and Warhammer Fantasy 2, Warhammer Fantasy 2? Total War Warhammer 2 plays out in, because at this time, as we said, chaos has tinged their perfect society, and this utopia has started to crack and to unfold. Ulthuan is on the verge of sinking, only propped up by magic. You've got the Vortex is in an unstable position, which is the sort of center of this whole campaign. And they're looking, if you take on their leadership, playing as Tyrion or Teclis, they're looking for you to bring them back into the big empire sprawling the world that they used to be.
Yeah, it's certainly not impossible in the game. But the way you approach it is definitely different. Like Tyrion is conquest, bravery, defense. He could strike out from Ulthuan to sort of rebuild the empire, defeat your enemies, defeat the Dark Hills, spread out to new land, maybe reforge your bond with the dwarves, who knows. Whereas Teclis is much more about, sure, he'll bring the thunder if he needs to, but he's a lot more considered, a lot more thoughtful, a lot more knowledgeable. Like he wants to forge bonds and hopefully save the world together, whilst also thinking the High Elves should be the ones that lead that through.
He's always looking at the big picture, thinking, well, obviously we're going to win this battle. What happens afterwards?
Yeah, Teclis is the strategist and Tyrion is the tactician, I would say.
And they work together so well because of that.
Yeah.
But with this sort of unique way that we play in Total War, you can pit them against each other. Obviously, from a perspective, I wouldn't recommend it either. From a perspective of the High Elf lore, obviously, I don't think there's any point in which they've fought against each other.
Tyrion and Teclis? No. I don't think Tyrion's that stupid.
But in Total War, if you want to make that happen,
you want to be that stupid.
Yeah, if you want to be the stupid guy,
yeah.
you have that freedom, which is the cool thing about playing Total War.
Yeah, I mean, it can all go really well for you, or it can just fold in on
Diminish.
itself. Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about Phoenix. We've actually got one of